All right, so we're going to be doing a little mic comparison here. The whole thing that brought this along was this guy right here. So this is an original Beta 57, and we're going to be stacking that up for one against my Beta 57, which is my favorite mic, only because, not for recording purposes, but if I have to put it in an in-ear, this is just what I dislike the least. I don't really love running in-ears when I have to. Now, as you'll see, if I'm pointing the right way, boop, over there, if you see in that window, there's a 57 already on the cab, which is not my favorite mic if I have to listen to it in ear. I think it sounds nice for recording purposes if you pair it up with like a large diaphragm or, you know, an R120, 121, if you can go to a nice studio that owns one of those. Just for a little bit of comparison, I do have an 87A, which is one of my favorite vocal mics, just to give us a little condenser flare. So we'll start off with the 57, and then we'll obviously compare the old Beta with the new Beta. And then we'll use my standard gigging microphone, which is a Sennheiser 906. I just have the 906 instead of the 609 because I found this one cheap used one time, and they're easy to drape over. For live use, I think it sounds perfectly good as one of these. I don't use it for recordings very often, just because it's a pain in the butt setup. And then just for funsies, the only other dynamic I have laying around is a Sennheiser 835 that has a different capsule, is what I mean. Of course, I have a regular 58 and a Beta 58, but those are the exact same capsules as the 57s, just different grill size. And I actually want the proximity effect from shoving these a little closer into the grill. So we're just gonna do a regular 57, Beta 57, Beta 58, I'm sorry, old Beta 57, 835, 609, 87A for just a little bit of conditioner mic. Okay. Let's go ahead and set up the first initial loop that we're going to use for all these. Playing today, this is my 67335. There's original T-tops, though not the original pickups that came in this. But they're still pretty low output kind of PAF style sounds. And I'm running through, as you can see down there, a little Vibrolux from the 70s with a Weber speaker. Besides that, it's pretty much stock. It's almost dimed out, so a little bit of verb and delay added from some pedals on the floor, but besides that, pretty straight in. So, do a nice little... simple little chordal stuff, and major scale up and down, little noodling. All right, so that's the 57. Next, actually, let's go right down the line of all the 57s. So next, I'm gonna try out my tried and true. This is my favorite normally to go to. So. Hopefully it sounds different already. to our vintage Beta 57. Let's see if this makes a big difference. Now, to be fair, I did use this on a solo acoustic gig just as a vocal mic for the funsies, and I did notice that that mic seemed a little thinner and clearer than my standard 58 Beta 58, which is what I normally use for vocal mics a lot of times. So very curious to hear this result. Of course, there was our beta. Before we move on to the conventional mics, I want to try out my tried and true, because these are the ones I want to hear back to back the most, is the regular beta, the vintage beta, and the Sennheiser, because this is what I actually use for gigging. So, let's see. And you'll notice that she's purposely cocked on there, and we're not going to straighten it out at all, because half the time, that's what ends up like on the gigs anyway, so let's just give it a go, see how it turns out. Little off center. Two more? Alright, last we'll do the last dynamic, which is a Sennheiser 855. Now, I'm not as familiar with the Sennheiser lines because I kind of just switched over to Team Shure for whatever reason, flip a coin years ago, and just to make my rider list all the same style of microphone and company. But I believe that this is essentially equivalent to like a Beta 58. So this is like an 835, I think is their 58 comparison. And then this is like the super cardioid version and might be neodymium and all that jazz, just like 58 does. I think this is the tighter polar pattern though. That's the main difference. So this is probably not all that dissimilar from like a 58, honestly, or Beta 58. So it shouldn't be that different from our Beta 57, the new one. fun little squeal of a note there, playing in C sharp when I should be in C minor or E flat major. Okay, there we go. Try not to turn down the volume anymore on you. One last one, and this one is going to be our special because I believe. Here we go. There we go. Hit that good old button. That'll give us our 48 volts of phantom power for our condenser mic. This is the 87A, by the way. I have been in love with that microphone. It's one of my favorite vocal mics ever since I did a Barnaroo event, not Bonnaroo, Barnaroo in local Waterville event back in high school, and we got to sit in with the house band, and that's what their lead singer had as his main vocal mic. And I remember hearing it come back out of the monitors, and it was just so clear and so clean. I have since kind of reverted back to using a Beta58 because they're easier to ring out on stages often, but 87 is one of my favorites, and it's a good little small diaphragm condenser. Actually, I've used it as an overhead for drums a couple times and some other things, so still a nice microphone if you pick one up. All right. Now I can finally turn down the guitar. There should be just a tiny bit of movie magic, and then I'll be back so that way I can listen to these and maybe make a tiny bit of commentary before we go ahead and wrap up the video. Okay. So far not blowing my mind. Sounds like an electric guitar. Quite dark sounding, actually, now that I think about it. Kind of a bit of a dark sound. But sounds like a recorded guitar. So this is currently, you're hearing the 57. Sip of my coffee there. My microphone's gonna fall. Nice simple little chordal stuff. And you can hear me talk. Alright, let's jump over. This will be. I remember I started my guitar just a little hotter, so don't mind the fact that it's driven a bit again, just to leave it. Alright, so this is a modern Beta57. To me, this sounds a little clearer and fatter at the same time. I don't know how. It just sounds like more. Now, one thing I'm going to quickly do. I'm going to do a couple splices in this. We're going to normalize all these tracks for myself. Off to our vintage Beta57. Let's see if this makes a big difference. Alright, everything's been normalized now, so this should actually be a little bit of an easier comparison instead of me just... oh yeah, that's blasting me the good old ear hole. Alright, this is moving on to our vintage Beta57. not hearing a ton. Now, to be fair, I'm only hearing this on one ear right now because I got just a single plug for my quarters adapter. So I'll have to listen back to these on the full like stereo speakers later. But right now, genuinely not hearing a big difference, which is funny because when it came to singing live, and I've sang through just the 57, plenty of times the Beta57. When I sang through this live, this sounded a little thinner and more transparent. Like these kind of like 57s and Beta57s tend to add a bit of kind of a mid push that sounds unnatural, but it fits in the mix well, where this felt a little more neutral sounding, almost closer to like what my cardioid sounds like, except that this has way more air in it because it's still, you know, a condenser. It's a cardioid there. Condenser is what I meant. This is actually a super cardioid. You can even see it on the little logo right there. They got the super cardioid logo. But I'm not hearing a big difference. Let's move on. I'm very curious now to hear.
And you'll notice that she's purposely cocked on there, and we're not going to straighten it out.
All right, this is our Sennheiser. This is this one. A little more rolled off highs compared to the other ones, and I don't have it in the rolled off function. I have it in the flat function you can see right now, so I'm not rolling off any highs on purpose. It does sound a little tamer, which could be one reason why I like this a little better on live stages. Is I mentioned before, it was mostly about in-ears. This rolls just enough top end off that I think it wasn't piercing me in the ear when I had to use it. That being said, for recording purposes, I want that clarity, so I can imagine not using this in recording. That being said, the differences are still smaller than I thought. 2 more mics, and then we'll call it. So this is going to be our Sennheiser 855. Let's hear that. It's more vocalized. This comes as no surprise. Immediately I heard that, and you know what it sounds like? It sounds like my modern Beta57. That doesn't surprise me because I believe that this is Sennheiser's version of like a Beta58, basically. It's very much in that same kind of vocal profile, as well as I think it's the super cardioid just like that. It might be a neodymium just like that one, but more importantly, all this is a Beta58 with a smaller grill. That's all the differences between the 57 and 58s are. So if this sounds a lot like this, no surprise, because this is basically a Beta58, and this is basically a Beta58. So no surprise that this sounds really good. In fact, I might keep that as a nice little surprise, because I actually only take my Sennheiser mics with me out on gigs, and I just use all I use all Shure microphones on my gigs, just to keep everything the same. Not that I have to deal with riders terribly often, but it's just nice to just have everything fall under one category. And I only ever bought the one Sennheiser mic. This might be a great mic to just leave at the house and use as a guitar mic and be my dynamic at home, so that way I don't have to sit there and drag my diaphragms out of the car or out of the garage or things like that for my live rig stuff. Because I see no reason to sell this mic. I got it for a good price. Like a lot of mics I buy them used. As for the most part, good quality mics, you know, as long as they're not actually building stages with them, as they like joke about in their advertising, like they're pretty fine. You can, you know, I know mics, some of these mics are older than I am, not the ones I own besides maybe this one, but I just mean I've played on plenty of stages with plenty of guys who have, you know, Shures from the 70s and 80s and 90s all the time, and they're fine. They're just, you know, beat to hell. But as it is, here's the 87. I'm actually very interested in this one, especially because I would probably almost never record with this one directly, but it'd be a great pairing because I don't normally want to move this from its position. It's the only large diaphragm I have at the moment. So this is the only diaphragm I have. So to capture some nice air and maybe some low end bump, I don't know how good this is at picking up real low end stuff, but at least to pick up some air off the tops and things, this might be a great pairing with my other mics. So let's hear what this one. Immediately, just like how I always feel whenever I use a condenser on a cabinet, it's always funny to me that like that's not the standard way to go, but our ears are so used to what a guitar should sound like on a recording. I feel like you have to use a dynamic to some degree to make it sit in the mix that way, but I start hearing this and the first thing I'm thinking is like, that sounds the closest to what it sounds like in the room to me, which is how I always feel when using a condenser on almost any source, but especially like guitar, just because it's one of those things that I'm so used to hearing it in the room, and then all the things that we do to record it or put it on the stage and make it quiet, all those things make it not sound like it's in the room anymore. So I'm always chasing those. But it's funny because I know that this isn't actually what most people want to hear in the recording. To me, I like it because it sounds the most like what I'm used to hearing around me, but it doesn't sound like what most people hear because I've walked off stage. Even off stage, guitar doesn't sound the same off stage as it does on stage. And then it especially doesn't sound the same on the recording or out front after it's been mic'd and put in the mix. There's all these options where it's like what the audience hears and what listeners hear is almost never what I'm wanting to hear on stage and what I've grown my ears accustomed to. So it's really funny that I'm loving this, but I'm also aware that it feels, for a recording, it feels mid-scoot. It feels hollow for a recording though, because it sounds just like how my guitar sounds in the room to me, or at least the closest in comparison through the one headphone I'm using at the moment. So that's fun. This could probably be a nice pairing. It doesn't do the low end thing very well, but there's another trick I could do to get some low end, which I'm not going to do today, but there was an old recording trick where you can take like a small combo, like the said, where is it? My hand's pointing the wrong direction. There we go. Boop, boop, boop. My hand's pointing my little Vibrolux, like a little amp like that, or a 110 or 112, and then you unplug the speaker, plug that jack into a direct box, run that out to a pretty powerful preamp, and then use that as a sub kick, like a cheap sub kick, or as instead of a sub kick, as just a really large diaphragm to capture low frequency information as well. You can use it on guitar cabs and bass cabs and such. I discovered on accident that one of my amps that has an XLR output on the back, I can bypass half that stage and just plug that XLR directly into my system, never turn on the amp, never power it up or anything like that, but the speaker is moving just enough that it sends that voltage back up to the speaker emulation inside of the amp, and it's sending the signal right on down. And I think that the built-in DI and everything of, it's a Mesa Boogie by the way, Mark 525 110, I think that that DI there, built in the back, has just enough in probably the transformers to take that tiny voltage and pump it up. It's actually a pretty nice low end sound. And the first time I found it is I was doing a live gig, and I had it there as a secondary amp in case someone showed up and wanted to jam on it, but I wasn't using it. But I had it plugged in to record the whole gig, and I never turned it on. And then all I was getting was low bass, low guitar, and the kick, even though the kick was 2 feet away. It was just picking up all the low frequency information, and I just found it on the recording for that gig. I looked at that channel and I was like, why do we have frequency information? I never plugged in a guitar. So that could be a really interesting way to give like some low end girth to maybe a cabinet, and I might try that out another time. But in the meantime, hope you enjoyed this. I just wanted to make a short video because when I picked up this funny little guy, there's not a ton of information online about them, so I thought I would just do my own quick comparison to see, you know, these are like, I don't know, 160 bucks or something new. You can find them used for under 100 pretty often, so like less than a new SM57 cost. You can buy a Beta used pretty cheaply, which is what I normally do. And this sucker is sitting like somewhere in the high 200s. I saw someone on Reverb asking 400 for him. So just wanted to see what the magic was because I'm I'm probably more likely just go buy one of these and maybe flip this one out at some point, unless it really blows me away. It's supposed to be a great snare mic as well, but we'll see. In the meantime, thanks for checking out.